Conquer them, get conquer them, get conquer. Them still not safe inna them jeep nor them tonka. Conquer them, get conquer them, get conquer. Inna the fire lake, the peace them get anchor. Conquer them, get conquer them, get conquer.
What's up guys, welcome to AIP TV. This is your guy Isa Abdurrahim, your host. I just wanted to do a bit of commentary. I saw this interesting video about reparations. It was about reparations. There's a professor on here from Morgan State, and I feel like, you know, reparations is a very like a contentious topic. You know, people are on both sides, not just in America but also in the black community. It's kind of a polarizing thing. There's some people who think we've earned enough. You know, we have affirmative action, we're free, we have all these legislative gains, whatever you want to say about that. But there's those who think that's not enough. So guys, I just wanted to get into this. I want to see what you guys think in the comments below, but let's get into this video first and have a discussion.
Welcome to the Real News. I'm Eddie Conway from Baltimore. I'm here again with Dr. Ray Winbush for part 2 of our discussion on reparations. Dr. Winbush is the Director of Urban Research, the Institute of Urban Research at Morgan State University. And please join me in welcoming him, Dr. Winbush. Thanks for returning.
Absolutely.
We were talking about the modern aspect of reparation, what's been going on in the last 25 or 30 years. We looked at the history, and now I would like to see what we have been doing up until today. Yes.
Well, you know, Eddie, reparations, they're as American as apple pie. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that several groups have gotten reparations. For example, Japanese Americans during their incarceration, and rightly so, right after Pearl Harbor in the 1940s were incarcerated, and they got reparations under that extremely radical president by the name of Ronald Reagan. Native American groups have gotten reparations in the form of, you know, gambling casinos that are tax-free, health clinics and so forth. The only major group in this country that has not received reparations are African Americans. So in the past 25 years, I would say, you know, in my book, I mark it at the beginning when James Foreman, who we mentioned earlier, when he went into Riverside Church in 1969 and demanded reparations for enslavement. That kind of launched it. In the 1990s, Randall Robinson wrote a book entitled The Debt, in which he called for reparations. And keep in mind that during this period...
Wait, hold on. When did he say reparations? Hold on.
That kind of launched it. In the 1990s, beginning when James Foreman, who we mentioned earlier, when he went into Riverside Church in 1969 and demanded reparations for enslavement.
1969 was the first mention of demanding reparations for enslavement. Wow, that's crazy, guys. And another thing I wanted to comment on was, you know, this is, you know, Dr. Ray Winbush. Go look him up, guys. Morgan State. Shout out to Morgan State. Shout out to Baltimore HBCUs. You know, he mentions that reparations are as American as American pie. Japanese Americans, Native Americans, they've received reparations. So that's very interesting. You know, that's very interesting. And, you know, just to kind of go to the concept of tort and like, you know, this is a legal concept in law. Tort, T-O-R-T, go look that up, guys. If you don't know. But a tort is a civil wrong that causes someone to suffer a loss or harm, and it results in a legal liability or responsibility for the person who commits that act against that person who is wronged, right? So, typical. I know you guys hear it a lot on TV. Medical. The doctor messed up on the surgery, right, and caused the person to be personally, permanently disabled or something like that. So the doctor caused something that caused that person harm. So this is why I believe the Japanese Americans and the Native Americans were paid reparations, because it was a direct involvement of the U.S. government, especially with Japanese Americans during World War II. And you can even argue, especially with the Native Americans, especially post Civil War, when you had that big expansion period out westward, where there was, and of course, there were clear wrongs done against both these people. But why, you could ask, clearly a wrong was done against African Americans, but why haven't they been paid yet? Maybe the argument is, well, this existed before America was formed. This existed with the colonies. The government wasn't directly involved. These were private persons. It was a private industry, what have you. I don't know. I'm just kind of brainstorming. But it says American as American pie, and why haven't, it seems clear that African Americans would be paid. But let's, they would be paid reparations. But let's keep going with the video.
That kind of launched it. In the 1990s, Randall Robinson wrote a book entitled The Debt, in which he called for reparations. And keep in mind that during this period, sisters like Queen Mother Moore had always been pressing for reparations. I would say that the Super Bowl, or at least the playoff bowl, came during the 2001 World Conference Against Racism that was sponsored by the United Nations. I attended the conference in Durban,
wait,
South Africa.
Let me just hold that thought for a minute, because one of the things that I need to be clear on is, I think in Randall Robinson's book, The Debt, it seemed like he asked for $1 trillion.
He did.
Did he? I mean, is that realistic?
Let's put it this way. You got to start at a beginning point. The Accra Declaration that you can find online was a study done by African scholars in Ghana in mid-1990s. They looked at the entire impact of enslavement on the continent. They looked at the extraction of rubber, diamonds, gold, mahogany. They looked at the kidnapping of somewhere between 50 and 75 million people out of the continent, the impact of colonialism, exploitation, and so forth. The figure they came up with was 77 trillion. I'm sorry, $777 trillion. There's not that much money in the world.
Okay, guys, so that was the Accra Declaration or something. I forget the full term he used, but anyway, a council in Ghana, scholars there, 777 trillion. Okay, is the amount. Lowest amount quoted was 1 trillion that should be paid as a result of the wrongs of past history. But I want to skip forward, guys. Let's see, world's largest graveyard. Let's get into more of these tortious acts, or these wrong acts, right? What was done against, right, the original people, these original Africans who came to these shores of America, that it justifies reparations. Let's get into that.
And one of the things that's left out of that equation is the amount of Africans that were killed to execute the slave trade itself,
Right.
because people didn't go willingly into those ships. So there was all sorts of combat that led to millions and millions of people dying before they extracted that amount of slaves.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, every time I fly across the Atlantic, I view it as the world's largest graveyard, because we usually count the Middle Passage, about how many people died in the Middle Passage, you know, the 2.5 journey from the west coast of Africa, the so-called Western world. But you got to count the people who were captured in villages and they were stolen. Then you got to count the people that died in the so-called barracoons, or the little prisons they made on the ocean side, waiting for the ships. Then you count the ships. And then when you get on the other side of the Atlantic, in South America, Central America, as well as in the North America, you got to count the first year of enslavement, because there was a huge mortality rate, because Africans in this part of in North America, they weren't used to cold weather and died at an incredible rate. Again, getting back to John Henry Clark's figures, he said we must begin to count at 50 million. One of my professors in graduate school was John Hope Franklin, and he estimates it at about 60 million. So we know that a minimum of 50 million Africans were kidnapped. And just think about all the labor, the talent, and all of this stuff that was lost, you know, as a result of this. And then we still see the impact of enslavement on the continent of Africa itself. But we also see it in how cities are built in this country, how so-called, I don't even like to use the term ghettos, but poor black communities, unemployment, this stuff is still a legacy of enslavement. And
So there you go, guys. That's a good point, actually. Not only did you have millions, like he was giving the numbers. One scholar gave 50 million people stolen, because he also accounting for the illegal part of the slave trade. The lowest figure is 7 million. Highest figure is 60 million of people taken from the continent of Africa. And I guess we can never fully know, especially with these numbers that have such big differences. But basically, a lot of people, tens of millions of people, were taken from Africa. So you think of the cost it has on the actual continent of Africa, you know, such a large population of people taken over centuries, what sort of devastation and instability it caused there, but and also the breaking up of tribal life. But you also, you know, that's a lot of people taken and brought to a new land. And like he was saying, a large portion of these people died on slave ships. They died in the barracoons awaiting the slave ships. Within the first year, many died also, especially in North America, because they were not used to the cold weather. So, you know, there was certainly a great human toll, right? A lot of people died, a lot of people suffered, right? Because there were those who had greedy interests, basically. They wanted, you know, to increase their output of sugar or tobacco or whatever to serve the colonial homeland and produce finished products that they can then pump out to the world and make themselves rich. So it was all in service of greed. Okay. So, you know, that's some evidence right there as to why this is justified. So I just want to skip to this middle passage, and then it's going to close out.
Africans.
Well, one of the other factors is that after 1825, when Great Britain outlawed slavery, they were confiscating ships that were known to have slaves on it. So what they would do, the slavers would have a huge boulder on the end of the ship.
That's right.
And they would have the slaves chained to it all the way down. So they might have 600 slaves on the ship, and they were all chained to each other. And if a British man of war was spotted, they would push that boulder over there and let all those slaves come up out of the cargo
That's
hold
right.
and go straight down into the ocean.
Absolutely.
And they were killing like hundreds of thousands like that just
yeah.
to save their ship because
Right.
they didn't want that ship to be confiscated, right?
It had a certain way. And see, that's why some of these conservative historians, who I will leave nameless at this point, they said, well, only 7 million came over. And what they were doing, almost exactly what you said, they only counted the legal. Most of the slave trade was absolutely illegal. And so, you know, that's why when they count these slave manifests that were generated by Lloyd's of London and other insurance companies, they're just counting the legal part of the slave trade. It's probably at least 4 times that time. So if you take Phil Curtin's number, you know, 10, 11 million, you'd have to multiply that by 4. So you're talking about 40 million people minimum that came across, many of whom died in ways that you just said.
Let's go to Durban now. You've been like raring to talk about Durban. What happened in Durban?
Oh my God.
And when?
It was in late August, early September of 2001, and literally something like 30,000 people gathered from all over the world to talk about the World Conference Against Racism. There have been several what they call PrepComs leading up to that. The African caucuses, and when I say African caucus, black folk from the Caribbean, the United States, the continent itself, and Europe united and said that the issue that we were going to press for was going to be reparations, and to try to get the transatlantic slave trade declared a crime against humanity. And for 10 days over there, the United States, as you know, walked out of the conference. We got it passed. And it was passed literally on September the 9th, 2001. And we know, of course, what happened 2 days later on September the 11th, 2001. In fact, on the morning of 9/11, I was.
So I like that he mentions that. You know, this was a conference in South Africa, and the Black Caucus there, you know, they were pushing for reparations and to get the transatlantic slave trade declared as a crime against humanity. I forget the name of the conference he said it was. It was like a world conference type of thing. And the United States walked out. I think that's a telling detail, a very important detail. Because like I was saying earlier, I think the U.S., they don't see the responsibility from it. This is just me speculating. This is just my opinion. You know what I mean? I'm sitting on YouTube giving my opinion. But my speculation is that the United States feels, well, this happened before we formed as a country, and we as a government, we didn't have anything to do with it. This was a private matter. You know, private citizens were conducting this. So why should we accept responsibility and pay reparations potentially to all these people? But it's also very sad that the United States walked out, because basically, who is going to be the person who could provide that type of that relief to a wrong that you know, a huge wrong, a huge crime against humanity, as he said, and I agree, a crime against humanity. Who is going to right that wrong in the United States, if not the United States government? Are we going to go to individual slave owners who lived in the 1700s, 1600s, whatever? No, they're dead. So just like, you know, like in the concept of the law, right? There's the concept of suing the defendant that actually has the money, right? Like if I, like say, for example, okay, like a person is selling me something. They're a salesperson for, I don't know, skin cream. They sell me skin cream. They may be an independent contractor or something like that. But rather than suing them, or I may sue them individually, but I'm going to also sue the company that made the cream. You get what I'm saying? Because I know the company that made the cream, they have the money to pay. The salesperson, maybe they don't really have the money, because I'm asking for a lot of money too. It's a lot of damages, you know, for the skin cream, really. My hospital bills were big, you know. I'm asking for $2 million or something like that. So that salesperson can't pay, but I know the company can pay. Anyway, that's the concept under law. I'm not going to go too deep into that. This is not a law channel. Okay? But that concept is there. So the same concept, I think, would exist with the American government. Right? We can't go after the slave owners that, you know, that lived in the 1800, whatever, 1600s. They're dead. They're long gone. We can trace their families, but what use does that make? Maybe they don't have the money either. It doesn't make any sense. It's better to go after one defendant, right? If this was like a case, suing, because it's like a tort, basically. It's like going to court for this. Okay, so yeah, that was a great video. But let me pull up this Dave Chappelle skit on reparations.
And now, a News Center 3 special report with Frank Dobson and Chuck Taylor.
Good afternoon. I'm Chuck Taylor. Frank Dobson died last night in his sleep. Our top story, as we all know, Congress recently approved paying over $1 trillion to African Americans as reparations for slavery. Well, today, the first checks were sent out. Wendy Mullen is standing by live in Queens with more. Wendy?
Thanks, Chuck. We're standing here in front of the Olympic Liquor Store in Queens, where scores of African Americans have been lined up for hours. We spoke to a few of them earlier. Ladies, may we get a word?
Hide the money, y'all. There's poor people around. With your broke ass.
Sir, now that you've got your check, do you plan on quitting your job driving this truck?
Truck driver? I ain't no truck driver. I'm a janitor.
Janitor?
That's right, baby. I just bought this truck straight cash. And I got enough cigarettes to last me and my family for the rest of our lives. I'm rich, biatch!
So, Chuck, as you can see, it's been a pretty amazing day. Back to you.
Wait, Wendy, let me get this straight. Why aren't there any banks in the ghetto?
Well, Chuck, that's because banks hate black people, but I think that's about to change. Back to you.
I bet you're right, Wendy. Hot damn almighty, I bet you're right. Well, these checks aren't just affecting things on Beach Street. Wall Street is having a big day as well. Our financial correspondent, Michael Peterson, is there. Michael, what's happening?
Chuck, a lot of activity, as you can imagine, here on the market. These people are spending money like hotcakes. Get this, Sprint stock has skyrocketed after the news that 2 million delinquent phone bills have been paid just this morning. Incredible. Gold is way up. Diamonds are at their most expensive level ever. Catchphrase around here is certainly bling bling. Oil has dropped to $1.50 a barrel, while chicken shot to $600 a bucket. Amazing news there. Just about everything on the market is up. However, watermelon is surprisingly flat to find many analysts out there. Chuck, get this. 8,000 record labels have been started in the last hour. Incredible. Cadillac announced that they sold 3 million Escalade trucks this afternoon alone. It's incredible, Chuck. These people just seem to be breaking their necks to give this money right back to us. Folks, I am happy to report that the recession is now officially over, and we have nobody to thank but all these black people with their taste for expensive clothes, fancy cars, and, of course, gaudy jewelry. Chuck, I can't believe my ears. The news just keeps rolling in here. I have just been told that Fubu is now the world's largest corporation after merging with Kentucky Fried Chicken. Just another amazing development on an already amazing day, Chuck.
Flabbergasting. A truly wild day that none of us will ever forget, no matter how hard we try. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, the crime rate has fallen to 0%.
So I wanted to share that skit, guys. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. This skit is funny. And Dave Chappelle, he's a funny guy. Shout out to Dave Chappelle. But I think the skit gets at something. And why is it funny? I think it's funny because we know it's a little bit true. That some people would do. And that's with anybody. It's not to that's a human nature, especially an American problem. You give them some money. Look at all these stimulus checks. Look at the COVID checks. People are gonna spend it. Okay, but I wanted to like have a little bit of discussion about that, because if we think about it, $1 trillion, and that's what was mentioned in the last video. I think that was the more conservative estimate. I think the highest was 777 trillion. That's not gonna happen, because there's not that money. There's not even that much money in the world that exists, so that's not gonna happen. But $1 trillion, that's possible. They paid out $3 trillion for this COVID thing, right? So $1 trillion is possible. So let's think about this. 1 trillion, I think that's 12 zeros. I got my calculator out, guys. Make sure this thing is right. 1 trillion. Okay, we have 12 zeros divided by, there's roughly 30 million African Americans. Right. 30 million. Yeah. So that would be roughly 33,000 per person. Everybody would receive a check for 33,000, assuming tax-free. It would be a shame if they put tax on it. 33,000 tax-free, guys. If you got a check for that much, what would you do with it? I would invest it, actually. I know there's a lot of people who would invest it. And I know there's so first I want to address, okay, so if this were to happen, first I think there would be people hating, right? If each individual African American were to get a check of $33,000 and every other person didn't get that check, they'd be like, well, I'm struggling too. I'm struggling more than him. Who cares about history? Even though there were other groups paid reparations, so there's a history for this. Anyway, so that's number one. There would be some hating going on, serious hating. Number two, some people would be irresponsible with it. 33,000. I could just imagine some people would be buying new cars, some people would be buying this, but the thing is, it doesn't matter. The haters, that's something to contend with, because I don't think it will cause like political ruptures. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it would cause it. Maybe there'd be a lot of people angry or mad. Oh, we shouldn't be spending our tax dollars on this, or going into debt for this. I have no idea. I think it could cause maybe deepen the political rift. But whether people spend it on consumer items or whether they save and invest it doesn't really matter. And either way, it's going to better the economy. If they can spend it on consumer items, well, it's going to go right back to restaurants. It's going to go to local shops. It's going to go to shoe stores, clothing stores, car dealerships. A lot of these are local businesses, so it's going to go right back into the market. It's going to enrich other people. If they save and invest it, like if they invest it into the stock market or something like that, then it's enriching the U.S. stock market, right? Because you're buying shares of companies and, you're providing capital for others. Or if you buy, I don't suggest buying bonds. That's my personal opinion. But if you do that, that's enriching the American government. So those two arguments are like straw men, and really, due to this is my opinion, due to the one, because there's a precedent, a history of doing this for other groups such as the Japanese Americans and Native Americans, and two, following the definition of a tort, the claimant suffers a loss, or the person who was wrong, they suffer a loss or harm, right? Or the group, they suffer a loss or harm. and it results in a responsibility for the person who commits that act, who causes the harm, to make it right. Right? I think there's a case for that with African Americans. You know, and I think it's a case for the American government to pick up the tab. And I know there's some literature. I know in that video, Dr. Ray Winbush, and guys, go check out that video for more. And I'll put a link to it in the description, actually. But go check out that video more. He mentions Ta-Nehisi Coates, his article on the case for reparations. So guys, check that out if you want to do your own research, dig into this more. But I thought that was an interesting video. Dr. Ray Winbush, Morgan State, talking about reparations, the history of reparations, and so on. Very interesting discussion. So guys, there you have it. There it is. I just wanted to lay that out for you. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I really want to know what you guys think. I appreciate you guys who watch my content and who like and subscribe. Please continue to like and subscribe. I'm stumbling over my words here. Continue to like and subscribe, guys. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.